Hi everyone, welcome to IOSH's Future Leaders Quickfire webinar. We're trying to do something a little bit different today by talking to a series of occupational health safety professionals, giving them 6 minutes to answer one question. So my name is James McPherson. I am the HS&E manager for the Glass and Glazing Federation, and I'm a member of the steering group. So we'll get straight into it, starting with Chloe. So Chloe is the HS advisor for Royce, and also a member of the steering group. So, Chloe, what does the future of the occupational safety and health profession look like for you?
Thanks, James, for the question. So for me, I think OSH professionals of the future will be knowledgeable, engaging, collaborative and transformational leaders. I think we're going to see a significant number of individuals coming in to health and safety and as a first-time career, rather than maybe a second career choice or even a third. And I think a lot of them will come from potentially university backgrounds as well. We've got a lot more university courses for health and safety now, and not just at undergraduate, there's also postgraduate and even PhD opportunities. So I think that's definitely going to support going forward health and safety using a lot more evidence-based practice and potentially developing interventions and strategies that are underpinned by theory. And I think that's going to provide us a good mixture then of people who are have a lot of experience but also have qualifications. So from my own experience, I came straight into health and safety with an academic background, and there was a lot of ideas I had that were from maybe papers I'd read, but the reality is they wouldn't have worked in a real life situation. But actually, when I've gone to some of my colleagues and said, I really want to do this, they've said, oh, okay, well, let's have a look at how we can do it and actually make it work here. And I think it's that collaboration that really, really fosters like developing young health and safety professionals, especially from an academic background then. And we might hopefully see a lot more research coming from within the health and safety profession. I think already we're seeing more papers coming out, and that might lead to some more specialisms in health and safety. I know yourself have got an interest in human factors, also behaviour change, mental health is massive at the moment, and trying to get more individuals to specialise in those areas to provide that subject matter expertise, I guess, will be really beneficial, I think, going forward.
Do you think we'll see a bit more diversity in the actual degrees that people are coming in with? So as opposed, so if they'll go down that, let's say they're going down that more or coming from that more academic route, it's not the traditional, I've got a PhD, master's or degree in occupational health and safety, but actually maybe psychology, sociology, philosophy, you know, any kind of, even by what's the word? Think of your words, James. Engineering, you know, science, you know, kind of things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a real benefit of this profession is we work everywhere. So if you have a background in an area, for instance, if you had a background in health and wellbeing, you could work in a hospital. You've got a good understanding and foundation to work off. Similarly, like you said, engineering, if we had individuals who specialise in engineering at university and go into health and safety later on, they've got that knowledge, that background to support a little bit better. So I think that's always a benefit. And even like when we get leaders that support individuals. So for instance, if we see someone who has that potential to do well in health and safety, why not offer them that opportunity to give them that coaching, to kind of support them in potentially joining our profession? They don't necessarily have to have chosen health and safety straight off the bat. And I think even if we were to grab some of university students and say, have you considered this as a career? Because actually everything you're doing here can still be used in this career path, just it might look a little bit different.
Do you think with a kind of increase of like the academia side, like I think there's a skill that you get from, and I'm not got an academic background, so, and you have, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a skill in academia of like finding research, critically kind of questioning that research, like understanding things like confirmation bias that maybe, you know, I'd never heard of until I started reading more books. Which I feel like if you're in academia or got an academic background, you get a better understanding of that stuff. Am I wrong? Or
No, absolutely. I think obviously anyone can learn this, that information. It helps if you're doing a degree or any kind of research like that, because it's kind of part of that. You have to do it. So like critically appraising research, I think they're skills that can be really useful going forward. You can recognise if there's maybe bias in the data you're collecting. But yeah, they're all skills that are transferable into the workplace, not just academically. But there's so many opportunities out there now for people to make that choice. But also, yeah, understanding data, understanding what you're actually doing and how to measure it, that's really beneficial from an academic point of view to then bring into the workplace.
So more academia then is your kind of, you think that we'll start to see an increase of people from a more academic background?
Yeah, I think in some cases we need it. So for instance, when we look at what's happened with COVID, there's a lot of reading that I've had to do to kind of understand what was going on. We've been talking about vaccines, we've been talking about viruses, completely out of my comfort zone. But in doing that reading and gaining a better understanding of the evidence base, I'm better able to support my business in actually making changes that are the correct control measures, rather than kind of just going, oh, this might work. I know that this will work because this has supported it.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree. I think reading research papers is a skill in its own right, really. Really
Yeah,
do it.
definitely. I think even like with the mental health, people are giving out advice that might not necessarily be correct based off their own experiences. Again, if you've got individuals that have gone through that kind of background knowledge of mental health, they're able to better support in a way that's probably a little bit healthier.
Spot on. And that's pretty much 2 seconds short of 6 minutes. Well done, Chloe. That was
thank you.
well rehearsed. Okay, Sunit, you are the Regional Health and Safety Manager for United Students, also a member of the steering group for the IOSH Future Leaders. What does a future of occupational health and safety professional look like to you?
So thanks, James. For me, the future OSH professional is authentic, innovative, curious, adaptable, and has a proportionate risk management approach. It's not about black and white thinking. It's going beyond compliance and playing with risk. We're shifting from being enforcers to facilitators with operational mindsets, and ultimately being coaches and influencers. So we're giving businesses the tools so that they can make informed risk-based decisions. I think the future OSH professional embraces risk and is less prescriptive, that they celebrate risk-based decisions and look at failures as learning opportunities, and are able to influence others to have the same viewpoint, to see it in the same light. I think the future OSH professional is going to step away from this obsession with legislation and shoving regulations down everyone's throats, and really be more focused on their target audience, and taking a more practical approach to helping employees carry out their job safely. So instead of hundreds of e-learnings and tons of risk assessments, what are the key things that employees need to know in order to carry out their job safely, and why? I think we focus on the how and the what quite often as safety professionals, and now we're shifting to like, why do people need to do what they do? I also think the future OSH professional is going to focus more on diversity and inclusion, that we're going to see a shift and an end to safety professionals being siloed into different industries based on their backgrounds. And we're going to see much more crossover and collaboration, and people embracing cognitive diversity. D&I is more than gender, ethnicity, sexuality, age, and experience. And I think we really need to start looking at who's going to be able to go into a business and truly influence in order to develop and embed sustainable risk management systems that aren't dependent on safety professionals.
Yeah, I love that. And I think given the team that you're part of, we have to talk about that kind of cognitive diversity point of view, because at United Students, you've kind of led the way on that point around, and I think for me as well, I started off in manufacturing and just been very lucky in that I've got a quite diverse background of experience, but a lot of the time that's been seen as a negative in my kind of job hunt, whereas actually I think it's a positive. I kind of put it very crudely, like it's, if you employ someone that's only ever worked in manufacturing, you're only ever going to get manufacturing ideas. but if you employ someone from healthcare, you'll get healthcare ideas as well. So it's a good thing. Have you kind of seen that in your team at Unite, and like that direct impact to that cognitive diversity?
Yeah, absolutely. So Steph Cam has put together an incredible team, and she's recruited regional health and safety managers from completely different industries. So some of my colleagues, some of them have worked in aviation, oil and gas, construction. Some of them have auditing backgrounds. I've come from a pharmaceutical background in science. And it's so beautiful to have a question thrown at all of us, and just for us to like work together, and we all see it from a different perspective. So a lot of the challenges that we've been able to work through, especially during COVID, which is like an unknown risk, and it's been difficult for all businesses to manage. I feel like we've been able to work and look at things from totally different perspectives, which has been really, really helpful to the end users, the people on the ground.
You must have to have quite a good psychologically safe team, surely, to be able to, I can imagine, you know, if you put a room full of a couple of auditors, a couple of scientists, a couple of, you know, safety people that used to be engineers, a couple of, you know, real mixed bag of people, there's got to be a lot of conflict in that. So you must need to focus on that psychological safety, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that staff's like driven since we all joined. And it's also been quite interesting because we all report into the heads of operations. So we don't have a direct reporting line into health and safety either. But, and I don't know if I should say this, but honestly, openly speaking, I'm always like saying controversial stuff, right? But Unite's been one of the first places that I've worked where I feel like I can be 100% my authentic self, because they've built that culture of psychological safety. And I think that's the only way forward. So everyone does feel empowered to say openly what they think, and we're able to challenge each other, have those rumbles, have our Brené moments, and then come out with a solution at the end.
Well, that's a powerful statement to the United team. So well done there. I think that from what you were saying, those we've only got like a minute or so left, but like those soft skills for me, from everything you've just said, kind of maybe overtake the previously kind of celebrated technical skills. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think health and safety is easy, right? Like we all work in health and safety. Anyone can go and get their, qualifications or read legislation. But very few people can actually take that, interpret it, and influence other people. So I think the things that really make health and safety professionals stand out is having those soft skills or power skills, and being able to communicate to people on the ground.
Spot on. Nice one. Do one of you lovely ladies want to introduce our next guest?
Yeah, sure, I'll do that. So next up we have Vekaria from Visa. So Jay is the HS&E manager for Visa International. So welcome, Jay.
Hi, Sunit.
Hi, Jay. So we'll get straight into it, Jay. What does a future occupational safety and health professional look like in your opinion?
So my opinion normally goes against the grain, and it's known to go against the industry. So I think the future of an OSH professional should be not to be an OSH professional. You want to remove the OSH. So the younger generation, and my advice to them is very much seek to understand health and safety. That's great. But there is no need for you in the future. We now live in a world where you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, things happen very quickly. You leave stories behind, you leave a mark behind. What we need to do is understand how to influence. And what professionals need to do is think out the box, understand economics, understand finance, project management. You all know what the law, the act says, and you could go into any industry, whether it's petroleum, manufacturing, and learn the basics. But the future of an OSH professional is actually to make themselves redundant and be themselves as an advisor to the business on everything, because true OSH is within the DNA of your business. It's got nothing to do with how many certificates or your accident reduction. It's got nothing to do with that. And I could tell you from now, when I deal with over 38 different countries, 40 different cultures, everyone's different. But the reason why you get conflict is because people always try to put their OSH hat on. In fact, the vision's exactly the same. What you need to be is very agile and open-minded to that. So The aim is, the future is not to be an OSH professional, to be more than that. Be your business consultant. Advise the business in every direction you can, and then throw your OSH elements in.
I love that, Jay. I love that. I really like what you're talking about there. And I've actually been having this conversation quite a lot on little geeky WhatsApp groups and things that I'm in. And I put that, so like the question out to this group is that kind of generalist role, which I think is kind of what you're talking about here, that generalist health and safety professional. Is it kind of redundant? And let's say we went down your route, you know, we're working to put ourselves out of business essentially. What do we look like then? Do we become specialists? So do we become, say, for example, like legal safety specialists, say like engineer or science-based safety specialists, and then maybe like people/culture safety specialists?
Let's drop the word subject matter experts. I think what you look like are innovators. You see, no matter where health and safety goes, it's always deemed as an overhead. Okay, so let's get that straight. The only way you'll add value to a business is by creating a new way or adding some form of innovation in a subject matter that's not that great. Now, whether that be reducing finance because you decided to do audits in-house, or whether that be finding operational ways to define a procedure that's so simplified that, you know, the operations could run smoothly. That's what it is, an innovator. That's the future of this profession. You know, every Tom, Dick and Harry can wake up and say they want to be a health and safety professional. I've seen it myself after COVID. You could go into a group of executives and everyone suddenly thinks they're COVID experts. Yeah. You walk into a finance meeting and all of a sudden everyone thinks they know the profit line. That's great. But out of the 12 people around the board, how many people actually add that true value? So an OSH professional in the future should be looking for that value, because they know everyone could copy paste what they do. You've got to be very unique and stand out. And that's how it will really work in the future. And it's already going that way. I can see IOSH doing that. And you can see that with the qualifications, because they're becoming more flexible. There's more coursework bases. But ultimately, the aim is not to make yourself redundant, but to add value into a business where you're seen as something else.
Because I think we're quite limited by our title. I'm just thinking back to a meeting I was in a couple of days ago where one of the directors were talking about a project they're doing around kind of streamlining their procedures, you know, working out, kind of trim the edges kind of thing, what's working, what isn't. And that to me sounds very similar to like work as imagined, work as done, which is quite regularly something we talk about in safety. And I think, well, I could dramatically bring value to that project, but yet I'm not engaged because it's not safety procedures we're looking at. So I think that's quite interesting the way you're kind of coming at it. If we're not seen as safety professionals, but seen as maybe, you know, a business professional, you know, more a holistic approach, maybe those conversations would open up more.
Yeah, so here's my take on our profession in terms of what you learn, okay? You learn more than an accountant because you learn operating models as part of your jobs to make decisions based on people's lives. You learn more than someone selecting subcontractors because you deep dive into these subcontractors to understand their culture. You learn more than a HR officer because you actually do accident investigations and root cause some of the reasons as to why people don't like coming into work. So all the skills, all the core sets that you picked up through your NEBOSH diplomas are all elements of root causes and systematic procedures, yeah? So in essence, the future should be really defined as risk managers. Wherever there's a risk in a business, people could put a value to it or put a credential to it or say, okay, I think it's high, medium, low risk. But in order to put control measures into that risk, they need a mindset of a safety professional. And the mindset of a safety professional is the tools that you have. You know, project managers are perfect examples. They could have all the tools they could have to make you do sprints or deliver projects and so on and that, but they're not associated with the project. They've got no material connection to it. Once the project finishes, that's it. The difference between us and their tool set is we live and breathe what we do. We can't walk away when a project's complete. We have to continuously monitor, improve, and develop that. So everything you've learned through your qualifications are more than what the other roles have. And people seem to forget that. As long as you apply them in that way, you will always be seen as the valued person. Like I said, the HR example is a perfect example of it. You know, you've got occupational health. You've got fundamental principles about stress management, well-being. You know, you apply that then to finance, and then you could help them work out what their sickness procedure should be like, or monitoring absence. Everything you could add value to, just like how you mentioned on the project. Your core skill sets are your core skill sets. It's just how you apply them.
That was spot on, Jay. I really like that. Thank you very much, mate.
No problems.
So James, what do you think the future OSH professional looks like?
Well, just listen to what Jay said. Yeah, for me, I think Jay was speaking a lot of sense. I think we're kind of limited by our title a lot of the time, and there's so many of us that can bring so much potential to a business, just from how powerful some of these people are at influencing, how powerful some of these people are at interpreting information. Yeah, there's so much stuff that we're taught, balancing of risk and so on and so forth. So I genuinely think that you will have maybe a more broader risk approach in a business. I'd personally like to see that. And then I personally would like to see the safety profession break off into specialisms, as I mentioned in conversation with Jay. People that can really get technical on a subject, be that the legal compliance / auditing side, someone that's absolutely great at interpreting systems and legal requirements and compliance, that can really make sure a business is protected from a legal and compliance and systems point of view. And then someone that's maybe like more of a scientific / technical understanding, is someone that's come from an engineering background. So think if you're working in oil and gas, someone that really understands oil and gas, someone that really understands risk within oil and gas. Now, you could quite say that, well, that's the person doing the job, and I think that would be a fair argument. And then I think we need someone that really gets, I think, the stuff that holds it all together, which is those human factors, those cultural stuff, that whatever you want to call it. For me, that's something we lack massively. If we weren't to go to the specialisms route and we stuck with generalists, then I think our traditional education routes into that need to bring human factors and culture and influence and soft skills 100% on board. I feel like we're going in that direction, but maybe not quick enough. And so for me, there'd probably be two things from a professional point of view. From a maybe personal point of view, I think they'll be younger, they'll be more diverse, they'll be a completely different type of person, just inherently because of the next generation up. They'll have a better understanding of personal brand, they'll have a better understanding of technology, they'll have a better understanding of how to talk to different people. Even when I was younger, the most people I spoke to were, from a diversity point of view, exactly the same as me, majoritively. But with the internet and how social media is absolutely blown up, which I know has been there for a long time, but these younger generations are so used to now talking to such diverse communities. I think they'll be better communicators for that reason. I think they'll be better innovators. So really, maybe nothing changes. We just wait for the younger generation to come up. But that's kind of my 10 pence worth. So
I guess one question coming from that, what do you think our role will be? So when we're the older professionals in the future, what do you think our role will be? And with regards to, I guess, coaching those younger professionals?
Our role would be to moan about there was nothing wrong with it in the past and not change and so on and so on. No, jokes aside, our role, I think, would be like any kind of, with a future leaders community. Yeah, so it's very important. It's frankly unbelievably important that IOSH and other companies and other organizations listen to the younger generation 100%. But that doesn't devalue the kind of wisdom that you get from experience and age. It doesn't devalue that in any way, shape or form. So they are still there, they still exist. As from a technical point of view, to follow my point and Jay's point around, does the generalist kind of become redundant? If they do, then if that was to happen to me, if the generalist is kind of going redundant and I am a generalist, then I would take it upon myself to pick a specialism and specialize. But there's a fair argument to say that generalisms is the way forward. I think Tim Ferriss wrote a book on it, I think, if I remember rightly. So yeah, I think we exist. I think the generalism role goes maybe into the general business managers. And then if that happens and I'm a generalist, I'll just pivot and try and upskill and specialize.
And if you were to upskill, what do you think you'd be interested in upskilling to?
I think anyone that knows me will know the answer to that. I'm absolutely fascinated by the people side of things, the sociology, and lately I've found a bit of a love for philosophy. And since I interviewed a gentleman on the podcast who's much more kind of from that way of thinking, and he blew my mind. And I was just like, do you know what? We need more of this critical thinking, critical questioning, the stuff that philosophers kind of do. I thought the safety profession is desperate for that. So probably somewhere there, sociology or philosophy for me.
Wow, that's really interesting. And yeah, definitely philosophy in general just blows people's minds. I think once you get into it, you're fully sucked in.
Yeah, definitely. I've been listening to a podcast, which I think anyone should listen to, called Philosophize This, which is just like a history lesson in philosophy. And I'm only like 6 episodes in, but it's just absolutely mind blowing. And you kind of realize that everything comes from that. And a lot of the stuff they talk about is a hell of a lot of the stuff what we talk about in safety. You know, if you were to ask a question, what's safe? You know, that's a philosophical question. What is safe is a relative term. So what does it mean to you versus what did it mean to me? You know, that's a philosophical conversation for me. So yeah, I think we need to see more people coming from that space. And that's what I kind of like what you said, Chloe, around bringing in diverse educational routes and academia routes, because I think that's massive. And bringing them all together. You know, if you're a sociologist, you're a sociologist. If you're a psychologist, you're a psychologist. You're not a sociologist. So you need to bring those two people together to get a real understanding of how people think and how they think in a wider kind of business scope, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you, James.
So I can see that Kaleem's just joined us. I'm not sure if we're going off the schedule, but Kaleem, since you're here with us now, I think we can jump in straight with you. So Kaleem is an EH&S lawyer for CMS. So welcome, Kaleem.
So what does the future occupational safety and health professional look like to you?
I think for me, it's my view is that the future professional will be required to expand their skill set to deal with existing and new hazards, existing hazards such as pandemics that we're all currently dealing with, and I'm sure you've all got your hands bit full with, but also new issues that the current generation and current workforce is facing, such as the increasing rise of mental health and people suffering in the workplace. And I think a professional will probably have to be will probably start dealing with such issues more frequently, but also the emergence of, in my view, technology and automation. We are moving into an era of significant technological advancement. We know everyone talks about AI. We know automation is pretty much here, and the talk is that within the next 10 years, this trend towards automation is only going to kind of be increased. And so when you consider the OSH professional, traditionally it'll be looking at and assessing the hazards in the workplace and what people are doing, what their behaviors, what impact their behaviors are having. I think people will have to adapt to consider, actually, well, what's the impact of this technology? What are the risks of? So yeah, that's my initial view.
Yeah, so kind of just, I think it's such a good point, because I mean, when I remember so long ago, and I'm really not that old, but when I did my knee body, which genuinely does feel like years and years and years ago, there was definitely no mention of a global pandemic. There was definitely no mention of a virus or anything like that, and we probably just whizzed over like mental health and stress. So I think you're right, Kaleem, in that there's so many new risks that maybe were there before, but we didn't see as much as we do now, but also brand new risks we would have never considered before. It's more than 8 months, nearly a year ago now. I remember sitting in my living room going, yeah, it'll be all right. this will all be over in a couple of months,
Mm.
you know, and we can go back to the pub and look at us now. So yeah, we're having to be, I suppose, in your, to kind of summarize it, maybe more dynamic in our kind of risk portfolio, I suppose. Is that right?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's the beauty of this profession and health and safety generally. It's, you know, there's always something changing. There's always some, you know, you always need to react to something. But I always say it's better to be proactive than reactive. And, you know, if one sees these changes coming, then you can almost prepare for it rather than when it hits you. Of course, none of us saw the pandemic coming. But in one sense, it has, in my view, I think anyway, and certainly from what I've experienced, caused a lot of businesses to reassess how they view health and safety and look at, you know, what are their generally office procedures? Because I'm sure most businesses, well, all businesses should consider health and safety. But I think lots of office environments, you know, it was probably pretty much a tick box exercise, whereas now, well, no, it's not a tick box exercise. You need to put measures in place, physical measures sometimes to deal with the risks. So yeah, it's being diverse. You know, that's one of the key terms I would use. You know, if you're diverse, you've got a lot more to offer to your skill set, and therefore you know, you're almost more of an asset to your employer and your team as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really interesting conversation. I could actually probably chew over this with a beer, if I'm honest. And that, I think that, you know, I said to, I think John Green, actually, I was talking to him, I said, you know, no one saw this pandemic coming. And he was like, well, actually, there's a TEDx talk from, what's his name, CEO of Apple, that says it, you know, it was quite clearly coming. But it's taking that and then going into work and going, this is actually something that we should get prepared for in case it comes over. And that balance of maybe being seen as a bit over the top to actually going, oh, okay, yeah, fair enough, that's a risk. It's a huge challenge, I suppose, for us to kind of take on board.
I think from a legal point of view, you know, you need to deal with risks that are reasonably practicable, and so you know, the law doesn't expect you to go over the top, but at the same time, you can't have a lax approach as well. So whilst the pandemic was, in some people's eyes, years away, other people actually were a lot more cautious and decided to do something about it. And it also kind of depends on your setting as well. We know certain, you know, care homes, hospitals have got very rigorous control measures in place, whereas some of the other industries necessarily don't need to worry too much. The majority of us are all working from home anyway, but that's the reason why I think mental health, and I'm a big advocate of mental health, is I only think it's only going to become increasingly talked about. You know, the new generation we're all clearly suffering from mental health from this pandemic. One hopes that, you know, the effects once the pandemic has ended will kind of just die away, and hopefully we can all get back to better mental and physical health. But you know, we're just all waiting to see what approach the health and safety executive take as well.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
there's not a lot that comes from them in terms of mental health, but when you look across the pond and look at what our French colleagues are doing, you know, they take mental health very seriously. And in one case, the you know, the directors of Orange, which was formerly 121 Mobile, were sent to prison and prosecuted for mental health offences. So
I am sorry,
yeah,
I'm going to have to nip you in the bud there, buddy, because as much as I would love to talk to you more about this, the whole point is 6 minutes each, and we are over that. So my apologies, but thank you very much for your time.
that's great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, mate.
So next up, we have Jamie Sutherland-Pownall from Slater and Gordon Lawyers, and he is also an IOSH council member.
Hi there, how are you?
Good, thank you, mate. Right, we go into it. So, Jamie, you have 6 minutes, ideally a little bit less than 6 minutes. But what is the future of the occupational health and safety professional look like to you, mate?
Who knows? Bit of a guessing game, isn't it? No, I think we'll see a move away from the compliance type roles of years gone by, and I think that's already happening. But I think we'll see that in a sort of a greater light going forward. I think the future OSH professional is probably going to be much more of a business leader, business enabler, to use that famous E word that everyone loves. Most of our technical skill sets, they'll be in the back pocket, but we won't be using them very often. We'll still be doing assessments and paperwork, but it'll be in the background. Front and center, it'll be us on the shop floor, on site, wherever it might be, in the boardroom even, pushing what we do best. I think we'll be far more outward looking, hopefully a little bit more savvy and switched on as to emerging risks, the pandemic being one of them. Some people not necessarily prepared or thought it was going to happen. Obviously others a little bit more, maybe overly cautious, but at least in the back of the mind thinking we might have to think about this going forward. So, just a little bit more switched on, as I say, to those kind of emerging risks. And I think much more of a health focus. I think we'll have much more of a health focus. I use the word health, obviously being a scientist, I'm not just on mental health here, I'm talking physical health, biological health. We can't be too sort of narrow and siloed in our thinking there when we say health. The pandemic, I think, not to go on about the pandemic, but I think it's probably highlighted for a few health and safety professionals that their health job title probably isn't as strong as it should be or could be. So I think moving forward, I think we'll see far more sort of, I don't want to say educated, but knowledgeable health and safety professionals that can almost turn the hand to anything. They don't need to be an expert, they don't need to be a microbiologist, but having that basic level of understanding, I think, will be key. But as I say, their technical skill sets, I think moving forward, it's all about, how you can better shape a business, what benefits you can bring, keeping employees in work. It's that straightforward. If they're in work, they're working. If they're working, you're making money normally. So it's as basic as that, really.
Yeah, no, I like that. And it kind of there's a couple of things you said there I want to touch on, but there's an interesting point you're saying there about kind of being able to deal with these emerging risks, which is a great term. And it's quite curious. I'm starting to see, I don't know if anyone else is, but I'm starting to see an increase in this conversation around building capacity to fail, which I really like as a term. But is having that, whereas maybe previously when I started safety, it was more do maybe the bare minimum. Yeah, it depends how you kind of risk assess, but do what we need to do to be compliant would probably be the overarching maybe tone of what a lot of businesses do. Not tarring everyone with the same brush, but it's build it when we come at it with a point of view of having the capacity to fail. Maybe we would have had this conversation when we first heard about COVID on the news. We would have gone, right, okay, so it's not quite likely it's going to come to the UK, but if it did, us as a business, how could we absorb something like that? If we'd have had that conversation, how many more businesses would have dealt with this a hell of a lot better?
Absolutely, James. And I think, I don't want to get drawn into a technical discussion on that, because as you say, you could spend all day discussing it, couldn't you, capacity. Yeah. I think what it highlights is that need to be a little bit more open, a little bit more pragmatic, and certainly work with other professions, because pandemic planning is inherently a business continuity type event. How many times in the past number of years will OSH professionals have worked with their BCP colleagues? Probably during a drill or a review of a policy, whereas at the minute we can't get enough of them, or they can't get enough of us, and we're pushing them away. So I think you make a valid point there, and I think it sounds so simple, but just working more collectively and collaboratively, where risks, the risks of this pandemic affect finance, affect HR, affect BCP, affect our function and our discipline. Just talking more, getting together more, throwing out those stupid ideas that you think are stupid but actually aren't that bad, or those silly questions that you think are silly but aren't that silly, I think is key. Like you say, James, someone said 5 years ago, when we have a pandemic that shuts half the country down, or the whole country down, or the world, you'd be laughed at. Whereas now it's a case of, well, I told you so, or maybe we should have listened, maybe we should have taken on board that, maybe we should have planned it a little bit better. So yeah, much still to do, but I think, as I say, future of the OSH professional, so long as they take a few of those sort of tips, hints and tips on board, and they look to work a little bit more aligned with other functions, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll do okay.
That was amazing. Thank you, Jamie.
Awesome. So next up, we've got Sam Greensitt. So Sam's the Group HS&E Manager for Redrow Homes. Welcome, Sam.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Hi, Sam.
Hi, James.
Question by now. So what's the future of the occupational health safety professional look like, in your opinion, mate?
Yeah, I think this is a question that is kind of real forefront of everyone's thinking at the moment. And I think the best way I've found to address my best answer for this is to look at where the industry not only needs to change, but is currently changing. So that kind of the future professional really, in my opinion, starts by the time I finish this sentence. We're all working in the future, right? So the way that our industry, I believe, has to move to align with what most companies actually say about themselves. Whether you're working in a cafe, you're working in aerospace, you work on a construction site, most senior leaders within your organization will say they put health and safety at the top of their agenda. Everyone says that. So if we work on that first key issue, and the second one being that no one else comes to work, or unless you've got, I don't know, maybe some people do, but no one comes to work to hurt themselves intentionally. That just doesn't happen. So we're in this battle between being really good safety professionals, yet we need to make safety inclusive rather than intrusive. And I think for a very long time, safety's been intrusive. It's been something that it's disruptive, it gets in the way, we're the fun police, or whatever you want to call it. But now, if we're really to exist and be successful safety professionals, we need to lead our business through change rather than just being very good at being good at safety. Like, most of us pride ourselves at being great at safety. But what happens if you're great at safety and your business isn't? You become like a rubber stamp team where people say, I need a risk assessment doing, I'm going to go to Sam in health and safety, rather than understanding what's needed, how to apply that as an organization. Because if we say that we put safety at the forefront of everything we do, then we're effectively working to do ourselves out of a job, which is a strange way to think about it. But a successful safety department isn't just wonderful at doing safety, it's wonderful at changing opinions and making safety inclusive within our organizations, which is the way I've tried to see my role within, like a house builder, who traditionally seen as, quite old school. But there's some industries that are way ahead of the curve. I don't particularly want someone who's checking my aircraft before I take off to be really talking about inclusivity and philosophy around health and safety. They need to do those checks because they need to be done because I want to take off safely. But the reasoning behind those checks has to be a moral and ethical one, which I believe, emerging leaders coming into the health and safety industry. The Harvard Business Review defines soft power as being able to shape the preferences of others, which is going to be so key for our journey into the future, because the days of, having a tear off slip and saying to the site manager, there you go, the things you did wrong, that's health and safety, see you later. Oh, no, my bonus is down the pan. Actually, we shouldn't be holding those conversations on site anymore. It should be our leaders in industry talking the same way I do, talking the same way we do, So trying to make safety inclusive is our biggest challenge. And I would challenge senior leaders with organizations to talk the same way they do about safety as they talk about, commercial values. If you said to a CEO, right, talk to me for 20 minutes about the commercial impact of your business, they could probably talk forever about it. If you said to them, talk about the impacts, the risks that are applicable in your business and organization, they'd say, oh, we've got a really good health and safety director. I'm going to bring up so-and-so to the stage to talk about that, because they feel maybe out of their depth. And the job of the advisor, the officer, the graduate, the assistant, is to make safety inclusive, and that goes all the way up the chain. And I appreciate that you are governed by your organization and what they say and how they encourage you. But then I think the choice and the ball is really in the court of the future safety professional to choose their organizations based on their preferences. I think long gone are the days where you just need a job so you go anywhere. Present time, I appreciate it, but it's the future health and safety professional will be able to cherry pick where they want to work based on organizational values, because it's all about how people think and feel, rather than knowing exactly what the compliance job is, and that's to do ticks and crosses and to say, there you go, you failed or you passed, and that doesn't actually achieve anything.
Yeah, wow. Well said, Sam. I genuinely, there's not very often I don't have a lot to say.
I tried to do a 6-minute monologue. I thought they told me to prepare. I'm just gonna...
there's not many times I don't have nothing to say, mate. That was spot on. I love what you're talking about. I love the kind of, make safety inclusive. That's a great term, and I'm definitely going to steal that. I think what you say about the younger professionals being a bit more picky, I think that's spot on. I think when I look at my sister-in-law, she's 10 years younger than me. When I look at my brother-in-law, and maybe this is inherent in their age, but I think it's a generational thing that they seem like they demand much more value beyond the traditional, this is how much I pay and this is my bonus. They want much more ethical value, ethical businesses, ethical and moral kind of responsibility. So I think you're right. I think a lot of employers will have to do that to maybe attract the talent that they want.
Yeah, sure. And the problem is everyone knows the sound bites now. We all know what rings true in the back of our minds. We read any just job description on LinkedIn and the sound bites are all in there and they're all the same. But as far as actually going to an interview process and deeply understanding what the organizational goals are and challenging someone in an interview and not being afraid and not having to just say yes and no and talk about your degree and whatever you've got. It's actually challenging organizations to prove to you that they're actually going to deliver on what they're saying they want to deliver. If safety is the top of your agenda, or employee well-being or environmental compliance or whatever it is, then how are we doing that? Do you have senior leaders leading safety meetings, or is it a safety job? Do everyone come to the health and safety department because we're like a rubber stamp team because we're so good at doing safety, or actually we want our organization to be good at doing safety? That's the biggest challenge, and that's how I think future safety leaders will have to adopt themselves and to really fit into organizations and make real change.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sam. That was flawless. Thank you very much.
There you go.
Cheers, buddy. So Ruth Denyer is the Director of Production Safety at Netflix. So Ruth, we've jumped the queue a little bit because of some technical issues. Jessy, we'll come back to you. But Ruth, what, in your opinion, what's the future of the occupational health and safety professional, in your opinion?
I think it's really exciting. I think it's a true partner to business in achieving the objectives of the business overall and considering people's safety, health, welfare, all those bits as one of the pieces you have to meet in those strategic objectives. So it's a true partnership with the business. And I think that puts us in a really exciting position. Yeah.
What do you think, what makes us not kind of, are we partners of the business now, or is it some do, some don't? What does not being a partner look like?
I think there's a difference between working in a silo and just looking at safety as a task-based discipline, where you're looking at how to do one thing in a safe way in a process, or holistically thinking about it as part of the whole organisation and how you manage the risks that you take every day doing what we all do to drive success in your business. And I think people look at it different ways, but and you need both elements. So you do need some task-based safety, but you also need to be looking at it big picture and thinking about where it sits within the organisation.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of that kind of way of looking at it comes from your experience in the creative industry, like that show must go on kind of thing? So you inherently had to think like that, like be a bit more creative?
I think it comes from there. I think it's also, it's what I'm really interested in, is how you own the upside and the downside of the risks you're taking in pursuit of your objectives. And I go back to that. Are they my objectives or are they somebody else's? And I'm supporting them in making that decision, or am I making it for them? And in a way, I've always felt if you make it for people, they're being let off lightly sometimes, because actually they should be taking account of that and understanding what people are being asked, or all those things. And you kind of, by taking it out and saying these people do safety or not doing it in partnership, you aren't expected to own that part of the activities that they oversee.
Yeah. So more like facilitators of the decisions and the expert advice, as opposed to the people that go, yes, that's safe, you can do it, kind of thing.
Yeah, and so you shouldn't. I always think if you have to stop something, it should be the person who owns that process or that activity who stops it, with the advice of the fully understanding the context from the safety person. But if the safety person is always the stopper, then people don't really understand why things are being stopped or changed or adapted or whatever it is. So it's really building that understanding.
Yeah, so kind of enabling more of an enabler to the workforce to own their own safety, which is kind of traditional safety. Like I remember back in the old day when we were taught safety, where they said, you know, you've got to make safety everyone's responsibility. It's maybe bringing it back to that, stopping it being a platitude and actually being something we actually do.
And I think, if I'm going to be brutally honest, the everyone's responsibility was framed as push it down the business. So when you say it's everyone's responsibility, it's the shop floor. What you're saying is you're responsible for yourself and the people you work with, and kind of you're talking more the operational people. You're not really talking, or you weren't talking. No, it's the chief execs and the board and the people who drive this business and the people who make those strategic decisions about what markets to go into. And I think it is everyone's responsibility, but it's making sure everyone is genuinely everyone. And actually, the more decision maker, higher up your decision making, you've got more responsibility. Yeah.
Like the platitude should have been everyone, safety is everyone else's responsibility, kind of thing. It's probably how we acted, but actually we still have an opportunity to facilitate that. It is actually everybody's responsibility. It's interesting to think about maybe like the finance advisor having a bit of a better understanding of safety and how their financial decisions that they make may actually impact safety. You know, if you're cutting the maintenance bill, what's the impact of that, for example? And looking at it more like that, and understanding how much of the other bits of the business need to understand what we do. That's an interesting point. I like that, Ruth. Very good.
Thank you, sir.
You still have a couple of minutes or so, so come on, drop some wisdoms.
I think being willing to be wrong is really important.
Well, that's a good one.
Because I think, if you try things, some will work and some won't. And you have to be absolutely willing to go, do you know what? Probably missteered that one. I've made many of them in my time, missteers, and learned masses from them. I do a better job today, as much because of the things that didn't go quite as well as we wanted to, as the things that went really, really well. And I think admitting that we don't have all the answers, that we don't know what the solution is, and actually that we need to understand a lot about what's really happening. And kind of, I love the humble leadership and the egg of shine stuff. I think it's amazing, because I think it's really what doing this job well is all about.
Yeah, and you've seen through this coronavirus period as well, like some of the companies that have come out this shining are the ones where the leaders went, I don't know what to do, but I'm going to try my hardest to find out what to do. They seem to have. And also, better.
To that point, I think the companies that are going to continue to work through the rest of the pandemic, because it's still here for a while, are going to be the ones who learn and flex their approach. So we know what we did last year. Stop. Is it still the right thing? Are there things we could refine? Are there things we could do better going into next year? Are there people who we need to focus more on supporting? And actually, yes, it worked last year, but it worked in true crisis response mode. Are we there, or is it turning into a more long-term issue? And questioning ourselves, like as the people who are on the front line of all this, now we know what we know. I know some of the information grew hugely, and is it the right information? Are people engaging with it now? And it's that constant just questioning of, are we doing the right thing for now, for where we are?
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you very much for your little 6 minutes of gold.
Boom.
Nailed it.
And out. And the curtain's down, and I'm going now.
Cheers, Ruth. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Right,
so now we have Jessy Gomes. Jessy is an IOSH Council member and a pre-academic. Is that correct, Jessy?
Pracademic, yes, that's correct.
Fabulous.
Hi, Jessy. Go on then. Right. You are the last but not the least of our great lineup. So in your opinion, what is the future? What does the future occupational health and safety professional look like?
Yes, thank you. Really good question. So for me and from my experience, the future of the occupational safety and health professional look like really bright to me and really exciting, because we have to reshuffle what we think about the traditional health and safety professional. We used to think about this white male in his 50s walking through a site with a notebook and walking around and trying to get this blaming culture going on. I think for me, the future of the health and safety professional, it's more a creative side of the profession. We need people that can have creativity. So what does that mean? We need more soft skills, number one. Two, hard skills. And number three will be to looking at any technology and the use of the new technology and embrace them. So when I talk about soft skills, it's about problem solving, critical thinking, being creative, using emotional intelligence. And when I think about emotional intelligence, it's about social skills. I think safety professionals need all these soft skills that I've been thinking about. So when we have organization hiring a safety professional, just don't think about all the hard skills they bring on, but think about all these soft skills and hire people not for their knowledge, but also for the potential as well. This is how I was hired 10 years ago when I first arrived in UK. Didn't know anything about health and safety, but I had someone who believed in all the soft skills I had. So number two, I mentioned hard skills. So what is hard skill? It's looking at all the abilities that you carry out and you can do the job differently. And for me, it's coming with like computer programming skills, it's coming with coding, it's coming with artificial intelligence and machine learning. So today the health and safety professional has to be ready to embrace all this new technology and new skills. So I'm not looking anymore to be a conventional, and I've never been a conventional health and safety professional. I'm looking ahead and about what are the new skills I constantly have to learn. And definitely for me, artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things. And when I think about artificial intelligence, deeply into machine learning, I'm becoming into really passionate about that. So think about coding ability and programming ability. I know some people, some conventional practitioner will be scared of hear that, but why not? We all have to start somewhere and we can learn these new skills. We were not born as a health and safety professional. When I first arrived in UK, I had to learn about the construction design management and I have to learn English at the same time. And I did it. So we can all learn new skills, so don't be scared. And when I think about hard skill, I think about project management and analytical skills. So data science, this is crucial. Without data, we can't go anywhere. And this is something I'm really passionate about. It's like, give me the data. And as a Pracademic, as you described to me, I think not many people are come across that, but it's being across practice and academia and being aware of the latest research, because we have like so many pool of research and nobody working in the practitioner world go back and drag back the academic paper into the practice. And this is what I'm trying to do. And with the Pracademic, it's like bringing the latest research into the construction practitioner. So I think that the construction need to really look into this and embrace new technology. So use drone to do facade inspection now. Don't send someone upselling. I mean, upselling could be really safe. We've got like really system into place, but if you can send a drone to inspect a facade, why not use and embrace new technology? And I know that some construction firms have started to do that, but why not everyone are doing it? So if you could send for roof inspection a drone, why not? You could still use a safety professional or someone's skills to being able to see any cracks into the roof or any specific issue into the roof, but use and embrace new technology. I think for me, this is like crucial.
I love that. I love that. You know, there's a couple of things you said there. I think that that technology thing, that is so true. Like a lot of roles, a lot of, well, let's just think about one example, you know, confined space, working at height, two kinds of risks that in a lot of roles could be eliminated by kind of sending a drone up to a roof to pre-inspect a roof or something like that. You know, I'm even thinking back to examples of my work in where I kind of trying to deal with kind of derelict buildings, and you know, we don't really know whether there's asbestos in there. We don't want to send a human in there. Could we send a drone with a air monitoring device on it or something like that? Maybe. And then from the research point of view, you said, I think that's such a good point. There's so much research out there that we are not aware of, that we do not utilize, you know, even just from the HS&E, you know, the journal that IOSH do, you know, there's stuff out there that a lot of us don't even know exists. And we need to.
Yeah, we have to, and I think we need to stop being driven by compliance and to legislation. We can be creative in construction. We could go beyond compliance, and this is what I always trying to see. It's like you don't have to just stop where the regulation is asking you to do, but you could go higher up and try to break through this plateau. And we have like the health and safety statistic plateau just being plateauing for many years. Why are we not breaking through this number? Why are we not getting less fatalities, numbers going down? And for me, like they really fundamental issue within the construction organization. And this is come with like weak systems within the construction industry. They're driven by profit, and the business model is broken. And Professor Headless Mice of University College London, who is my PhD supervisor, did a thorough research into health and safety and construction, and did tell us that the business model is broken. It's more transactional rather than transformational. We want transformation, and this is not happening quick enough. We know the things going on in the background, but there's not enough opportunity to transform, and there's not even opportunity to make more money, to be honest. So I think that construction industry have to change the business model in order to each of them to be different and being different from the competition as well. So what are you doing to be different from your competition? And this is where we can play. And organizational behavior, it's directly linked to the culture of the construction industry. So I think it's really crucial to look also at your organization and what you are showing outside of the organization as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Jessy. That was flawless. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. I kind of thinking about all of that, I think in summary, for me, I don't know about you two ladies, but two things come out there. One, more risk-based, more broad for the company, and then two, maybe a little bit science-based as well, like understanding that more academic side of things. They were the two kind of things that stuck out for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think drawing those links from, you know, touching on what Chloe was saying at the beginning, drawing that link between academia and practice, there's such a huge gap there that we haven't embraced. I loved the fact that everyone was talking about us being business partners and being influencers for the whole business, and not just having that health and safety hat on.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of just shows how much adaptation is hopefully about to happen in this area. Our profession's only moving forward, and it's really exciting to see where it's going to go.
And soft skills came up in nearly every single one, I thought. Nearly every single one talked about influencing, talk about communication, you know, whatever it is, empathetic curiosity, you know, things like that came up in nearly every single one.
And leadership and how they can kind of link together. For me, that was really important. Everyone kind of spoke about how leadership, the change in leadership behaviors and the impact that can have then on the business. So that's really exciting.
And I think one of the most interesting things for me has been like, everyone's been picking up on these soft skills and like leadership skills but where do you actually learn those skills as a young professional coming into the industry, or as, you know, somebody joining as a second career? Where do you learn that stuff?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we really need to look into as an industry.
I agree. Well, Thank you very much, ladies, for your time. I thought that was quite good. Okay, everyone, so thank you very much for listening to that IOSH Future Leaders webinar that's hopefully a little bit different. Hope you enjoyed it. And thank you very much. Don't forget to engage with IOSH Future Leaders on LinkedIn and the forum as well. And thank you very much.